Yeah, you may have to send a plumber over there every once in a while to fix something, but it's not actively, you're not actively having to turn it over and clean it and do all the advertising and all of that. It's also, a yearly lease is not subject to vacancy. Right now, Airbnbs in many areas are getting saturated, so their vacancy rates are going way up. So it is a business. You're operating a business out of that portion of your home, and you shouldn't get credit for that in the valuation or for qualifying for business income. It's no different than if you rent that basement out to two women that are hairdressers and they make their money doing that. Your value of your house isn't based on how much they make for doing hair or whatever, right? So we do not look at short-term rental income. It has to be long-term rental income. So even if the house has short-term rental income, we're going to go find long-term rental income comps and use that to determine the value. Because I own both. I own short-term and long-term. At the end of the day, they both end up being very close. When you take out all the vacancy, all the maintenance, I got to replace furniture like every other year in my short-term rentals. I mean, and then all the advertising, the management alone is 30% or more in some cases. So it's not as rosy as everybody thinks. It's great extra income, but be careful of that.
So an example of the ADU is like a guest home, right? Because I've never heard the term
A guest house, right? A carriage house, a finished basement, any unit, any space that's separated from the main part of the house that has its own access, and that somebody could live in on a longer term basis. And it's primarily boils down to that cooking source. If you've just got a wet bar down there, and you got a hot plate and a microwave, I mean, most of us don't cook anymore anyways, but that's kind of the way they're defining it.
You guys are using the cost approach to
No, the cost approach really isn't, and I think that question came up earlier too. Do we use the cost approach or even the income approach? We just look for other comparables that have ADUs. So I'm going to find another comparable that has an ADU.
So how far do you go out to find something like that? Because I have a house in Douglasville right now that has an ADU behind it, a guest home.
Yeah.
It has a sub panel and everything, and has plumbing, HVAC, and electrical. But I don't see any houses in that community or even in that zip code that have guest homes.
It gets really difficult, and it's really not any different than any other type of amenity, like a big barn, if you had a big barn, if you had a really nice in-ground pool. So we've got to go out and find those. And although the lender's still going to want me to have an ADU, if I had maybe one that had an in-ground pool, I'd say, well, you got one buyer who might want to buy this house because it's got an in-ground pool. Another one will buy this other house because it's got the ADU, and I wash them against each other. But you're right, I've got to go out really far sometimes to get that information, as far as I have to, and as far back in time too. That might be another good excuse to going back further. Maybe there's one in your neighborhood that sold a year and a half ago. There we go, I can use that one. And so without these sales and comparables, it becomes very challenging when you get into these unique situations too. So it's a battle. It's a real battle. How accurate do you think the tax records are for physical information? Yeah.
Extremely not accurate.
Yes. Tax, and that's good. That's good job security for me. I don't know if you've heard of it before, but a RedLink or CompFlow is an appraiser's database where when we complete an appraisal, we turn in that physical data. Do y'all subscribe to CompFlow? Okay. You could individually subscribe to it. Maybe you can twist some arms and get it. But it's a database, again, put together by appraisers, and it's all the physical data from when we go out there. So when I measure a house and I verify, even the lot size is wrong in tax records a lot. Particularly in Cobb County, it's wrong over 60% of the time. I don't understand why they got so convoluted. You'd think they could at least get that part right. But we measure the house, measure the basement, the room count, all of that stuff is in our database, CompFlow. So now when I come into your neighborhood, I'll go into this CompFlow. I don't go there to find comps. I find comps in the multiple listing service and what have you. But once I've got those comps, now I'm going to go into this CompFlow, and 9 times out of 10, there's going to be a record in there. If this house has been appraised before and the appraiser put the data in the system, where now I know the square footage based on what an appraiser measured it as. So excellent database. I couldn't appraise without it. So very, very valuable. So that's kind of leading us into, and I don't know where all these slides are even going, but what about What about square footage, right? What is gross living area? Basically, if you put your foot on the floor of any given level and any portion of that entire floor, that entire area is below grade, we have to consider that space separately than the above grade part. So pretty easy if we think about a typical two-story home in Atlanta. You know, the front of the house is pretty level to the ground, and then the sides slope off and it's open in the back. Daylight basement, great, but that lowest level, which we would call a basement, has to be just counted separately. And if you think about it, it really makes sense because our basements, basements typically have slightly lower ceilings. Sometimes they even have drop ceilings. They've got lower quality finishes quite often, and then there's very limited daylight down there, especially in the rooms that are closer to the front. So it's just critical that you separate it out, and that's why we compare apples to apples. We compare above grade space to above grade space in our comps, and then below grade space to below grade space. And so when your client is arguing with you about this, try to explain that to them. There's a document on my website if you'd like it. It's called the ANSI Measuring Standards. It's actually written out what is gross living area. They're the same people that say this is 16.9 ounces. They put together the rules with input from all the industry people on what should be gross living area and what shouldn't. We've abided by, and I've always appraised based on these standards. They were created decades ago. Do you want to know when Fannie Mae first started enforcing or utilizing the ANSI measuring standard in their guidelines? 2022, last year. Yeah. So the biggest problem that you're going to run into with these measuring standards is, those houses that have, like, there's a lot of them in Decatur where the roof on the second floor comes up like this, right? So the ceilings have to be 7 feet or higher. And then when you've got a room that has sloped walls like this, there has to be enough flat space. You can basically double the flat space at 7 feet. So if I've got 4 feet of flat space at 7 feet, I can count 8 feet of floor space. Now you've all seen this in a more casual way in the typical 1980s, 90s homes over the garage, right, where you got a 4-foot knee wall and then it goes up. Well, that's going to qualify all day long. We just measure between the knee walls and that's the space. But the ceiling height issue is what's really going to, and in the past, like I said, we always abided by ANSI, but when we got to those really gray areas, we were able to make common sense decisions and handle it. Now with ANSI as a mandatory standard, maybe you've been in a split level home where that lowest level is slightly below grade. The kitchen's down there. You don't have a kitchen in your house now because that kitchen's in the basement, so there's, so we run into issues like that. Or there's even some townhouses where this row of townhouses, all the lowest level is fully above grade. And then this one over here has like 1.5 feet of grade behind it. It technically doesn't qualify, so now I got to call this one with basement and this one is gross living area, and it gets very confusing and what have you. So it's a challenge for us. One of the main things we do try to do is be as consistent as we possibly can. When I get into those situations, I'll try to adjust. Remember I said, maybe I didn't say this actually, basement space is generally less valuable than above grade space. So if I'm adjusting $60 a square foot for above grade space, I can adjust up to $60 a square foot for the basement. There's no formula as how we get to it down here, but maybe we start at 50 cents on the dollar for the basement. So you're getting $30 for the finished basement down here. If you've got a very high-end home with high ceilings, tons of daylight, super good quality, you could get up to that $60 a square foot. And then when I get into these situations like this where I got to call that basement and I call this gross living area, I do the same adjustment to both, then it nets out and I don't have any inconsistency and I'm not penalizing one over the other. But gross living area is one of the most important parts. It's not all about gross living area, but it kind of puts you in buckets. I'm working on a property right now up near the lake, and I haven't had one that's been this tough to get comps in a long time. It's a 1,450 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath ranch on a crawl space. Easy, right? That's what I thought when I got the assignment. I can't find any comps. Part of the problem is that it's up near Lake Lanier, and so much of the property around it is Lake Lanier. I can't use properties on the lake. Those are, $200,000 or $300,000 premium. So then I'm going out, I've gone out 10 miles so far. The smallest homes I'm seeing are in the 1,700 square feet, but then most of those have basements. I mean, it's just a nightmare. So your house kind of gets put in these buckets. If they had 1,800 square feet, it would be a lot different. Then you're looking at a whole different pool of comparables. So you can't just use any property against your subject property. Like I said, not all sales are comparables. So I have to find other properties that a typical buyer of this house would be interested in. And 1,400 square foot is very limiting. It also makes the rooms, especially the master bedroom, very small.
So when you're dealing with something like that, what kind of percentage, how much latitude do you
Good.
have? So is it 14, 15
Yep,
square feet?
yep. The general acceptance is 10%, which is like 150 feet on either side. I can go up to 20, still raising a little bit of eyebrows, but I go more than 20%, I'm really raising eyebrows. That means 300 square feet, which puts me up to 1,700 and something, call it 1,800 square feet. So I can't go over 1,800 square feet. So I
Which a
can't.
lot- and thinking about it, that would probably be bad for the subject property anyway, because of the fact that you've
Right.
got at least a minimum of what a property is worth.
Yeah.
Just pure minimum because it's got a roof.
Right. That's an excellent point, is that same thing with a lot, right? You have a lot, and I agree that a larger lot is worth more, but double the size of the lot isn't worth double, because the majority of the value in your lot is in the ability to develop it. So if you can still only have one house on it, it's what we call surplus land. There's just a little extra value for it being bigger. Same thing with a house too. So, yes.
So I have a client that has a house out in Temple.
Mhm.
They have stairs that leads up to this attic, and there's a bedroom in there,
Mm.
window on each side.
Mhm.
It's 7 feet in the middle, but it has an A-frame roof, so it has like those walls that kind of go down like that.
Yep.
How do y'all value those type of things?
All right, so it's attic space. Let's say it's finished to the same quality as the rest of the house. It's heated and cooled like the rest of the house. So now we're down to determining how much square footage it is. So the 7-foot ceiling, you got to figure out how wide that part is. It probably runs the length of the attic or whatever that space is, but it might be like 3 feet at 7 feet. I can give you credit for 6 feet, even though the walls slope off. I've seen it where the wall just slopes all the way down to nothing. This space over here isn't worth anything, right? So, and that's why a 5-foot knee wall in a normal situation, in your normal house, over the garage is usually where it is acceptable. But anything below 5 feet doesn't count. In yours, we got to look at that, how much is there. In some of these Decatur houses, it just peaks at 7. That means none of it is gross living area. Does that mean that second floor of that Decatur home has no value? No. We make an adjustment for it down below under finished bonus room or something else. And then hopefully we find other comparables that have that same feature. So that's the goal. Because if I used another house down the street that had straight up 8-foot walls, far more valuable than this Decatur home that peaks up at 7. So.
Real quick, a home with an added part of the
Mhm.
house, and the addition is on the owner's suite or another
Yep.
bedroom.
Yep.
And the reason why it was created to be, or we could call it another bedroom, is because the part that they added has the windows.
Okay.
Very, very unique, creative.
Uh-huh.
However, when I saw it, I told my client, I don't think it heats and cool, does it? And she's like, no, I
Uh-huh.
have to keep the doors open. So it's
Uh-huh.
a room.
Yeah.
To make it an actual bedroom,
Mhm.
you just add it on, which you can still see
Yeah.
the siding.
Yeah.
And then it's like,
Yeah.
then when you go into public records,
Yeah.
it actually counts as a room.
Of course, the city will take all the money they can get on it. So if I came out to do a consultation, I'd say, we got to do this, we got to fix this, we got to get rid of the siding, or if you finished off a garage, you got to get rid of the garage doors. I've seen it. The house, it's finished off, but they left the garage doors. We've got to make sure that we get permanent heat and air into that room as well. Sometimes it's impossible. Most often you can get a duct to go in there. And it still needs to be finished the same quality as the rest of the house. Some of these, and I see you cringing, is it more like a champion enclosed porch, like a 3, otherwise it's a 3-season.
Fine, so it was sold.
Yeah, yeah.
And now,
That space should not have been counted as gross living area. I would have given it like a 3-season porch. And then it also sounds like there's other implications as to the room that it comes off of, because it doesn't.
So it's making a room, instead of a 2-bedroom,
Uh-huh.
they wanted to count it as a 3-bedroom.
Right.
And in public records, it says
Yeah.
I was confused.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought it was a two-bedroom with, let's just make this another room.
Yeah.
But it couldn't be considered.
Let's keep going with this because this takes us into what is a bedroom, right? How do you get into this new bedroom? Do you go through a bedroom to get into the new bedroom?
Sorry?
How do you get into this new bedroom?
There's a door, there's a closet.
But how do you, from inside the house?
Inside the house.
But is it from like a common area, like a living room? Okay.
You walk through.
So it's not like you can't, so if there was a bedroom and then they added on another bedroom outside, that wouldn't count, even if it met all those other
It looked like it was
requirements.
a bonus room.
Yeah.
Initially, or
Yeah.
as the process goes. But
Yeah.
if you look through and
A
through-
sunroom or something that was added on and now they're trying
Say
to.
anything about an
Yeah.
add-on or
All right.
anything, it just-
So what do you have to be a bedroom?
I was gonna say, wouldn't you have to have reasonable access to a bathroom too?
Right.
Ah.
So there's, so windows.
Window,
Closet,
closet.
door, and a bathroom.
Uh-huh.
The reason why it was made into a bedroom was because I realized the added portion gave the two windows.
Yeah.
So it's dark
Yeah.
with the bathroom, the closet.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So that's the point that most people don't know or realize. You have to have adequate access to a full bathroom. So your typical two-story home that has living room, dining room, kitchen, study, or what have you, and then a half bath next to it, that doesn't qualify as a bedroom, even if it's got a closet, a window, a door. It's also got to be of adequate size, 10 by 10, 100 square feet roughly. So you could just only call it an office. If you've got to go upstairs to get to a bathroom, that doesn't count. So you do have to be able to get out the window. Good point. A fire person in typical gear has to be able to get in and out. It can't be more than 30 inches off of the ground. Some of these things tie back to code, but most of what we do as appraisers, we've got to stay within the code, but we look at it through the eyes of a buyer. I mean, is a buyer going to think this is a bedroom if it's only got this small little window up here? No way, you know. Would a buyer think of this as a bedroom if there were just no closet? If it's a big enough bedroom, you could put an armoire in there. I get that argument all the time. Well, if you're in, downtown Atlanta where that's typical in Midtown, and buyers would expect that and not have a problem at all with it, but if you're in a suburban area where everybody expects the closet, then you really need to have it. That's something that we call for quite often is these bonus rooms over the garage. They're huge rooms, but there's no closet in it. Put a $500 closet in it, and now we're all happy. So that's where our consultation can help you get over some of these hurdles.
One question, I have a client that bought a branch that had, I guess you would call it a three-season room.
Yeah,
Because it was a big glass-in room.
Yeah.
Did not have heating and air.
right.
But they recently added a split system and cut a door into the master's bath.
Uh-huh.
Would that square footage then be considered gross living area and not a three-season porch because it's got heat and air and bathroom access?
Well, the bathroom access would make it move towards being a bedroom, but probably wouldn't get there. Let's just forget about the bathroom part of it. Is it the same quality as the rest of the house? Probably no. You're saying yes.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, it's got a lot of windows.
Okay.
Really beautiful molding.
Good.
It
Yep.
was-
Now it's like, yeah. So split systems is your answer. Sometimes you may not be able to pull it off the furnace that's there. You can put in one of those Mitsubishi split systems, and you're good. The window units, that doesn't really count. So, but is it the same quality as the rest of the house? Now, before we throw the baby out with the bathwater, what would I have given it as a three-season porch? Maybe $9,000. What does it work out to gross living area? 11 or something. So it's not like all or nothing. It's just the way we categorize it. Also, too, it's this huge room, which is 200 square feet. Now it makes you the largest home in the area. It almost can become a negative at some point, too. So we want to be careful of that. Yes? Go ahead. You go first.
Two clarifying questions. So a split system is considered an area to be heated and it's fine?
Yes, we all know what we're talking about, these little things. They put it mounts up here, and then it's got its own compressor on the outside. Those are okay.
Either hot, HVAC or heat? I mean,
Right, it does both. Yeah, it's not ideal. Put yourself in the shoes of a typical buyer. Would you rather have forced air? I think generally maybe. But, and can it really can only heat and cool maybe one or two rooms if they're completely wide open to each other. But it is a way to handle these one-off situations.
Okay. And did you say that a bedroom has to have access to a bathroom to be considered, but a full bathroom?
A full bathroom, shower or tub or the combination. So not just a half bath, correct. Yeah, yeah.
Taught me that.
Yeah, yeah. So, yes.
No, I think she had a question first.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay. The actual cost, like, I don't know.
Uh-huh.
That's